The chill of autumn had settled into our small college town, and with it came the promise of new beginnings. I was excited to start my freshman year at Crestwood University, eager to make friends and explore the world beyond my hometown. Little did I know that the darkest, most unsettling chapter of my life was about to unfold within the walls of my dormitory. My roommate Mark seemed like an ordinary guy at first. He was friendly, always willing to help with my heavy bags during move-in day, and he even offered to share his stash of snacks. We hit it off quickly, bonding over our shared love of horror movies and late-night gaming sessions. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. As the weeks passed, I began to notice odd things about Mark. He was a night owl, staying up until the early hours of the morning. I'd often wake to find him hunched over his desk, staring at his computer screen with an intensity that creeped me out. I tried not to think too much of it, chalking it up to his eccentric study habits. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. Mark had left his laptop open and I couldn't resist taking a peek. What I saw made my blood run cold. His screen was filled with newspaper articles and photographs of missing persons, each one carefully cataloged with notes. My heart raced as I realized the extent of his obsession. "Mark, what is all of this?" I asked, my voice trembling as I confronted him about the disturbing discovery. He turned to face me, his eyes devoid of emotion. "Just a hobby," he replied casually, as if discussing the weather. "I'm interested in unsolved mysteries, that's all." But it wasn't just the obsession with missing persons that unnerved me. Mark's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would disappear for days on end, claiming he was visiting his family or taking impromptu trips. Whenever he returned, he'd bring back strange, unmarked packages that he stashed in the depths of our closet. I tried to distance myself from Mark, spending more time with my new friends on campus, but he always managed to pull me back into his world. He'd invite me to movie nights or offer me his snacks, and I'd find myself unable to refuse. It was as though he had some strange power over me, a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. One evening after a particularly long gaming session, I couldn't hold back my questions any longer. "Mark, what are those packages you keep bringing back? And why do you always leave in the middle of the night?" He grinned a chilling, predatory smile. "I have a secret," he whispered, his voice laced with menace. "But I can't tell you just yet. You'll find out soon enough." I should have run then, fled from the darkness that seemed to envelop my roommate. But fear held me captive, and I couldn't tear myself away from the web he'd woven around me. Weeks turned into months, and the campus buzzed with rumors of missing students. It was as if our peaceful college town had become a breeding ground for tragedy. I couldn't help but connect the dots, wondering if Mark's obsession with missing persons had taken a sinister turn. One night, as I lay in bed unable to sleep, I heard the creaking of our closet door. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched in horror as Mark emerged, carrying one of the mysterious packages. He didn't notice me, too consumed by whatever dark purpose drove him. I watched in terror as he unwrapped the package, revealing a collection of photographs, all of them featuring me. Each image had been taken without my knowledge, capturing intimate moments from my life. Fear gripped me as I realized that I was at the center of his obsession. "Mark, what the hell is this?" I screamed, my voice trembling with rage and fear. He turned to face me, his eyes filled with a manic intensity. "You see, I have a secret and you're a part of it," he hissed. I knew I had to escape, to run as far away from Mark as possible. I leaped out of bed and bolted for the door, but he was faster, tackling me to the ground. We grappled on the floor, my fear-fueled strength matching his desperation. As we struggled, Mark's words spilled out in a frenzied confession. He had been responsible for the disappearances on campus, luring unsuspecting students into his twisted web. He had been studying me, preparing for the day when I would become his next victim. With every ounce of strength, I managed to break free from his grip and make a run for it. I dashed out of the room, the chilling echo of his maniacal laughter following me down the dormitory hallway. My mind raced as I fled, knowing that I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. I reached the campus security office, breathless and covered in bruises. They took my statement and launched an immediate search for Mark. As they combed through his room, they discovered a chilling array of evidence, including photographs and personal items belonging to his victims. Mark was apprehended, and the truth of his dark secret was laid bare for all to see. He had been living a double life, posing as an ordinary college student while hiding a sinister obsession with abducting and tormenting his fellow classmates. In the aftermath, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had taken hold of me. The scars, both physical and emotional, ran deep, a constant reminder of the horrors I had narrowly escaped. Crestwood University would never be the same, and neither would I. As the seasons changed and the years passed, I found solace in therapy and the support of my friends and family. Mark was locked away, never to harm another soul, but the nightmares of that fateful year would haunt me forever. The darkness that had once resided within my own dormitory had been exposed, but the true nature of Mark's secret would forever remain a chilling mystery, one that I hoped would fade into obscurity, never to be unearthed again. But the story didn't end with Mark's capture. As the investigation deepened, the authorities discovered a network of hidden chambers beneath our dormitory, each one containing evidence of Mark's depraved activities. The underground lair was a chilling maze of photographs, journals, and mementos, each one linked to a different victim. It became clear that Mark had been operating in secret for years, selecting his victims with disturbing precision. He had meticulously documented their lives, collecting information and mementos that allowed him to assume their identities. It was a nightmare beyond comprehension, a secret so dark and twisted that it defied explanation. The campus was in shock, and the media descended upon Crestwood University, hungry for every detail of the horrifying discovery. Students and their families demanded answers, and the university was forced to confront the unthinkable truth that had festered beneath their very noses. As the investigation continued, more victims were identified, and the full scope of Mark's crimes became clear. Families were reunited with their missing loved ones, but the scars of their ordeals ran deep. Crestwood University would never fully recover from the stain of Mark's actions, and the dormitory where the nightmare had unfolded was forever tainted. In the years that followed, I tried to move on with my life, but the memories of that fateful year continued to haunt me. I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched, of a darkness that lingered in the corners of my mind. The nightmares persisted, a relentless reminder of the horror I had endured. As I walked the halls of Crestwood University, I couldn't help but wonder how many other secrets lay hidden beneath the surface, how many other nightmares were waiting to be uncovered. The campus had been forever changed by the darkness that had taken root within its walls, a darkness that had nearly claimed me as its victim. The legacy of Mark's dark secret would cast a long shadow over Crestwood University, a chilling reminder that even in the most ordinary of places, the most sinister of secrets could be lurking, waiting to be revealed. And so, as I looked out at the campus that had once been a place of promise and hope, I couldn't help but wonder if the darkness that had consumed Mark might one day resurface, casting its sinister shadow once again. I had always thought of myself as someone who could handle life's twists and turns with ease. After all, I had weathered my fair share of ups and downs over the years. But nothing could have prepared me for the peculiar turn my life would take when I moved in with my new roommate, Alex. It was a sweltering summer day when I first met Alex. I'd been searching for a roommate to share the rent of my small 2-bedroom apartment, and he had responded to my online ad. We met at a nearby cafe, and our initial conversation was pleasant enough. Alex was a tall, wiry man in his early 30s, with a mop of unruly brown hair and an awkward but endearing smile. We quickly agreed to become roommates. His rent payment would be a lifesaver for me, and Alex assured me that he was quiet and kept to himself, which sounded like a dream come true for a roommate. Little did I know that his reserved demeanor would soon unravel into a series of bizarre and unsettling behaviors. The first sign that something was amiss came in the form of late-night noises. At first, I chalked it up to the usual settling sounds of an old apartment building. But as the weeks went by, the noises became more distinct and scary. I would hear faint whispers and soft thumps in the middle of the night, as if Alex were engaged in some mysterious nocturnal activity. One night, unable to ignore it any longer, I ventured out of my room to investigate. I found Alex sitting cross-legged in the living room, surrounded by an array of candles. He was hunched over a worn, leather-bound book, muttering incantations in a language I couldn't recognize. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and filled with an intensity that made my blood freeze. "Alex, what are you doing?" I stammered, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and confusion. He looked up at me, his eyes momentarily vacant, before a twisted smile crept across his face. "Just some late-night reading," he replied cryptically before closing the book and extinguishing the candles. I returned to my room, my heart pounding in my chest. The encounter had left me deeply unsettled, but I convinced myself that it was nothing more than an eccentric habit, a quirk that I could tolerate in a roommate. As the weeks turned into months, Alex's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would spend hours locked in his room, and when he emerged, he would be carrying strange items, a taxidermy crow, an antique dagger, and even a collection of unmarked vials filled with murky liquids. I had no idea what he was doing with these items, but it was clear that he was immersed in some bizarre and unsettling hobby. One evening, I returned home from work to find our living room transformed into a makeshift altar. Candles, incense, and strange symbols were scattered across the floor. Alex was kneeling at the center, his eyes closed in what appeared to be deep meditation. "Alex, what is all of this?" I demanded, my frustration and anxiety boiling over. He opened his eyes slowly, gazing at me with a scary calmness. "I'm pursuing a higher purpose," he replied, his voice carrying an otherworldly quality. "I've found a path to enlightenment and I must follow it." I couldn't make sense of his cryptic words, and a sense of dread settled over me. It was as if Alex had ventured into a world of his own, one that was steeped in mysticism and darkness. I couldn't fathom what had led him down this path or how it had taken hold of him so completely. As the days turned into weeks, I became increasingly isolated in my own home. Alex's presence loomed over me like a dark cloud, and I couldn't escape the feeling that he was hiding something far more sinister than his eccentric hobbies. It was as though a wall had been erected between us, and I was left on the outside, trying to peer in and make sense of the madness that had consumed my roommate. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to investigate further. I carefully picked the lock to Alex's room and ventured inside. What I discovered would haunt me for the rest of my days. The walls of his room were covered in intricate symbols, drawn in what appeared to be blood. Shelves were lined with ancient-looking books, each one filled with cryptic texts and illustrations of grotesque creatures. The air was heavy with the scent of incense, and in the center of the room I found a circle etched into the floor, surrounded by candles and adorned with disturbing symbols. As I inspected the room, I stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside, I found a collection of journals, each one filled with Alex's ramblings and accounts of his bizarre experiences. He wrote of visions of encounters with entities from other realms, and of a growing obsession with the occult. My heart raced as I realized the depth of Alex's descent into madness. It was clear that he had become entangled in a world of dark magic and forbidden knowledge, and there was no telling where it would lead him, or what it might mean for me. Terrified and unsure of what to do, I confronted Alex about what I had discovered. His reaction was unlike anything I could have anticipated. He laughed, a chilling, mirthless laugh. "You've stumbled upon the truth, my friend," he said, his eyes gleaming with a manic intensity. "I've unlocked the secrets of the universe, and there's no turning back." I knew then that I had to escape, to flee from the madness that had consumed my roommate. I packed my belongings hastily and made plans to move out. But as I prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that Alex's dark obsession would follow me, that I had become entangled in a web of darkness that would never let me go. As I settled into my new apartment, far away from the nightmare of my old life, I couldn't help but wonder what had become of Alex. Had his obsession with the occult consumed him completely, or had he found some semblance of peace? I would never know the answers, but the memory of those eerie nights in our shared apartment would haunt me forever. I had learned a valuable lesson about the darkness that can lurk within the hearts and minds of those we think we know. It was a lesson that would stay with me, a reminder that sometimes the most unsettling and inexplicable mysteries can be found closer to home than we ever imagined. In the years that followed, I tried to put the nightmare of my former roommate behind me, to move on with my life and leave the darkness that had consumed him far behind. But I couldn't escape the feeling that some part of that darkness had latched onto me, that I had become a part of a story that was far from over. And so, as I looked out at the world, I couldn't help but wonder how many other individuals were hiding their own dark secrets, how many others were on the brink of a descent into madness and obsession. The line between reality and the unknown was thinner than I had ever imagined, and I couldn't help but fear what lurked on the other side. Living with roommates was nothing new to me. In fact, it had been a significant part of my adult life since graduating from college. The shared rent, responsibilities, and the occasional company of fellow housemates had always seemed like a reasonable arrangement. But when my new roommate, John, introduced me to his girlfriend, Sarah, our home dynamic took a turn into uncharted territory, revealing a dark secret that would forever change my perspective on shared living. John had moved in about a month ago, taking over the room across the hall from mine in our cozy 2-bedroom apartment. He was a friendly, easygoing guy, always ready with a joke or a helping hand when needed. He had mentioned his girlfriend, Sarah, a few times in passing, but I hadn't had the chance to meet her until one fateful Friday evening. I was relaxing in the living room, engrossed in a book, when I heard the front door swing open, followed by the muffled sound of conversation. I looked up as John and a woman entered the apartment. She was petite, with a cascade of jet black hair and an air of mystery that seemed to envelop her. "Hey, this is Sarah," John said with a warm smile. "Sarah, meet my roommate, Alex." Sarah extended her hand and I shook it, offering a polite greeting. There was something about her that piqued my curiosity, a sense that there was more to her than met the eye. But I dismissed it as mere intrigue, thinking that perhaps it was just my overactive imagination. As the weeks went by, Sarah became a regular presence in our apartment. She and John spent most evenings together, cooking dinner, watching movies, and sharing stories of their day. On the surface, they appeared to be the picture-perfect couple, deeply in love and genuinely happy. However, I couldn't help but notice that Sarah had a certain aloofness about her. She would often retreat into herself, lost in thought as if carrying a weighty secret. I tried to respect their privacy and dismissed it as a personal quirk, but a growing unease began to gnaw at me. One evening, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Sarah. John had gone out to run some errands, leaving us in an awkward silence. I decided to break the ice. "So Sarah, how did you and John meet?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Her eyes flickered with a shadow of something I couldn't quite place, a mixture of sadness and fear. "We met at a support group," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "A support group?" I asked, intrigued and concerned by her answer. Sarah hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Yes, it's a group for people who have experienced trauma," she said, choosing her words carefully. I could sense that Sarah was holding something back, something dark and painful. I didn't want to pry, but my curiosity got the better of me. "Trauma?" I asked gently, hoping she would open up a little more. She took a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. "I can't go into details, but let's just say that we've both been through some really difficult times," she replied, her voice trembling. I didn't press her for more information, but her words left a lingering sense of unease. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of trauma had brought Sarah and John together, and what dark secret she was hiding beneath her quiet demeanor. Over the following weeks, I began to notice subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She would often startle easily, her eyes darting around the room as if expecting danger to strike at any moment. Her cheerful moments with John grew fewer, replaced by long periods of brooding silence. One evening, as I was in my room working on a project, I overheard a heated argument between Sarah and John in the living room. Their voices were raised and I couldn't make out the words, but the tension in the air was palpable. It was the first time I had witnessed such a dispute between them, and it left me with a growing sense of concern. The following morning, I ran into John in the kitchen. He looked exhausted, his eyes bloodshot from what appeared to be a sleepless night. "Is everything okay with you and Sarah?" I asked cautiously. John sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "We've been going through a rough patch lately," he admitted. "Sarah's been dealing with some personal demons, and it's been taking a toll on both of us." I wanted to offer my support, to reach out to Sarah and let her know that she wasn't alone, but I didn't know how to breach the subject without intruding on their privacy. Instead, I decided to keep a watchful eye on the situation, hoping that things would eventually improve. As the days turned into weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong with Sarah. She had become increasingly withdrawn, rarely leaving the apartment except for her support group meetings. I had tried to strike up casual conversations with her, but she would respond with one-word answers, her eyes haunted by a deep sadness. One evening, as I was returning from work, I found Sarah sitting alone her eyes fixed on the flickering television screen. Her gaze was distant, and she appeared lost in a world of her own. "Sarah, are you okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned. She turned to look at me, her eyes welling with tears. "I can't do this anymore, Alex," she whispered, her voice filled with anguish. I sat down next to her, offering a comforting presence. "Do what, Sarah? You can talk to me." She hesitated for a moment, as if wrestling with her thoughts. Then, in a trembling voice, she began to reveal her dark secret. "I've been living in fear for years," she confessed, her words heavy with pain. "There's someone from my past, a dangerous person who's been haunting me. I thought I could escape, start a new life with John, but he's found me. And now he's threatening to destroy everything I hold dear." I listened in shock as Sarah recounted a harrowing tale of abuse, manipulation, and a relentless pursuit by a figure from her past. She had been forced to change her identity, move to a different city, and join the support group to escape the tormentor who had haunted her for so long. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke, and I could see the terror in her eyes. It was a story of unimaginable suffering, and I couldn't help but feel a deep sympathy for her. "Why haven't you gone to the police?" I asked, my concern growing. Sarah's expression turned to one of sheer terror. "I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's always been one step ahead of me. If he finds out that I've gone to the police, he'll stop at nothing to find me. I can't put John or anyone else in danger." I realized that Sarah was trapped in a living nightmare, unable to escape the dark shadow of her past. It was a chilling revelation, and I knew that I had to do everything in my power to help her. Over the next few days, I worked with Sarah to develop a plan to ensure her safety. We installed security measures in our apartment, changed her routines, and she began attending therapy sessions to address the trauma she had endured. It was a small glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak situation. But as we delved deeper into the intricacies of Sarah's past, it became clear that her tormentor was growing increasingly relentless. Strange and threatening messages would appear on our doorstep, and we would occasionally spot a shadowy figure lurking in the shadows near our building. The situation reached a breaking point one fateful night. John had gone out to run an errand, leaving Sarah and me alone in the apartment. As we sat in the living room, the light suddenly went out, plunging us into darkness. Fear clenched at my chest as I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight. I could hear Sarah's rapid breathing, and I knew that we were not alone in the apartment. The sound of shuffling footsteps echoed through the darkness, drawing nearer with each passing moment. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, bathed in the dim glow of my phone's flashlight. It was a man, tall and menacing, with a look of malevolence in his eyes. He advanced toward us, a chilling smile on his lips. "Sarah, you can't hide from me," he hissed, his voice dripping with malice. I sprang into action, doing my best to shield Sarah from the intruder. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to push him back and slam the door shut, locking it securely. "Call the police," I told Sarah urgently, as I braced the door with all my strength. Sarah dialed 911, and I could hear her shaky voice as she relayed our terrifying situation to the dispatcher. Meanwhile, the intruder pounded on the door, his threats growing more unhinged by the second. Minutes felt like hours as we waited for the police to arrive. The intruder continued his relentless assault on the door, and I could feel my strength waning. Just when it seemed like he might break through, the sound of sirens filled the air and the intruder fled into the night. The police arrived, taking our statements and promising to investigate the incident. It was a small victory, but it came at a great cost. Sarah was traumatized by the encounter, and the fear that had consumed her for so long had now become a horrifying reality. In the days that followed, Sarah and John decided to relocate to a different city, hoping to escape the relentless tormentor who had haunted their lives. I helped them pack their belongings and wished them well, hoping that the distance would finally provide them with the safety and peace they deserved. As I watched them drive away, I couldn't help but reflect on the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Sarah's ordeal had been a stark reminder that the past can cast a long shadow, one that can engulf even the most promising futures. I returned to my apartment, grateful that Sarah and John were safe, but haunted by the knowledge that their tormentor was still out there, lurking in the shadows. It was a chilling reminder that sometimes, the darkest secrets are the ones that threaten to consume us whole, and that even in the face of unimaginable fear, there is always a glimmer of hope. And so as I settled back into my quiet, unassuming life, I couldn't help but wonder how many other individuals were living with their own dark secrets, how many others were grappling with the shadows of their pasts. It was a sobering thought, a reminder that we never truly know the demons that may be lurking just beneath the surface.